Okay, g'day there. Richard MUSGRAVE-EVANS here again, and welcome back. Now today I'm going to do something a little different. We're in the studio. I've already got a finished plein air piece that I did several months ago. And what I'm going to do is, quite often when I'm out in the field, I did a video of this, me painting this out in the field. I'm quite often in such a frenzy, I'm trying to explain what I'm doing, and hopefully you pick up on some of it, but sometimes it's a little hard to pick up on all of it. So today, what I'll do is I'll set up some colours here, and I'll actually go through the process and mix the colours. So for example, I'll say here's the blue sky, the top of the sky. So I'll pull the colours in and I'll explain what I'm doing as I go. Then we'll go for, say, the water, go for the colours there, the beach sand, the shallow, the weed banks. I'll just mix it up as I'm going through the process and explain, and hopefully it's a clearer and you can pick up more as to what is actually going on while I'm out there painting. Now I believe that being able to mix the colour very quickly on site is absolutely essential when you're out there. Everything's changing so quickly that you need to be able to really see the colour, mix it as quickly as you can and get it fairly accurate. So practicing things like this at home is a great way to hone your skills when you're working direct from the subject outdoors. And working from the subject outdoors is the number one, because out there you can see the colours. In the studio quite often it's a bit hard to remember, and photographs don't quite get it right and all that sort of stuff. So painting a picture outdoors to me, is essential to get the right colours, but at the same time practicing at home is a great way to be able to match those colours when you're out there. Alright, so we'll run through it. It should be something different, something a little interesting. So, for example, we've got the beautiful beach sands. We'll get a bird's eye view here, and I'll be mixing them up and explaining what I'm doing. Same with the rest of it. Alright, I'll get some paint out and we'll make a start, no worries. Okay, now the colours that I'll be using in this demonstration are Viridian Green, Permanent Magenta, Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Burnt Sienna, Alizarin Crimson, Cad Red, Yellow Ochre, Titanium White, and Cad Yellow Deep. Now with those colours we'll be able to mix up the whole thing. Right, now let's just have a look. Okay, now we want to start on the higher portion of the sky first, so we'll go with, let's just go with some, the top part of the sky is ultramarine blue, and there's a tiny piece of magenta with it. There's white. Now you can see it's a little bit too purple in that area because there's a bit too much magenta. So we'll just mix a little bit more of that ultramarine blue in. Just a tiny bit darker. So that's a slight red blue, and the permanent magenta has made the ultramarine blue slightly bluer, slightly redder again. Okay, so that kind of gives you the top of the sky. In fact, I might just go slightly darker than that, so we'll just go for a little bit more ultramarine blue, a little bit more magenta, so it's a slightly darker version with a little bit less white. And you can see we'll just place her in there like that. Okay, now as we go down into the levels, you'll see that the sky from the deep ultramarine blue is now starting to get a little bit greener. So what I'm going to do there is mix up a bit of a phthalo blue and a slightly lighter tone. So we'll just grab a little bit of phthalo blue, and now this is a very strong colour, phthalo blue, so you don't need much pigment. It's amazing how strong it comes up. It's a slightly green blue, as you can see. Now that's extremely green, and it's greener than what I actually painted with. So what I did is I knocked it back a little bit, so I'll just put a tiny bit of this, which is the red blue, and if you stick a little bit of the red with it like so, it's just going to take a little bit of the intensity out. Now I'll just lighten that tone with a bit of white. Now that's a bright colour, and it's a little bit too bright. If we have a look at the sky in this area, you will see there's a bit more of the ochres in it, like yellow ochres and burnt sienna. So what I'll show you how I get hold of that. What we do is I'll just mix a little bit of burnt sienna here, yellow ochre, some white. So this is making a light ochre-y tone. Just a bit more yellow ochre, I reckon. And a little bit more white to lighten the tone. Now with that colour like so, if I half mix that into this colour, immediately we're starting to get more of a pale greenish sort of colour, and that's the colour that was in the sky. So I'll just put this here. And blend them together a bit like so. You can see the gradation. Just go into a little more of the ochres down low here as we go down now. Let's just point that out. Okay, so we've gotten the deep ultramarine blue going into the greens, a little bit more of the ochres here. Now when it gets right down low on the horizon here, there's a bit of a coastal haze, a bit of salt water and whatever in the air as you get on the coast. So that'll grey it just that little bit. Which means what I'm going to do now is get a bit of this titanium white, mix it with a bit of this ultramarine blue mix from the sky earlier and a little bit more magenta. And that's sending it more of a grey, and it's quite a light tone. Now if I put the tiniest bit of burnt sienna's on the opposite side of the colour wheel, and we'll just make that purple slightly more of a grey colour. It's the right colour, but it needs to be a slightly lighter tone, so there I just lighten that tone. Now if I introduce that on top of this sky colour half mixing, you'll start to get that atmospheric haze. Just blend this bit up at 2. You'll start to see that gradation between the deep blue sky gradiating to the greens, the ochres, and then right on the horizon you have the salt haze. Salt haze. Right, so now we'll move up to, take a look here, you've got the horizon, which is a deep dark blue, and there's a fair bit of green. I've added some green in with it too, so it's a combination of blues here. It's not pure clean blue, it's a little bit greyed, so let's see what we can do. Okay, so what I'll start off with is my ultramarine blue. It's predominantly got that sort of tone in it. A little bit of white, I'll get the white from there. Now there's a slight green, so I'm going to use that green blue, a little bit of phthalo, not too much. Like I said, it's very strong stuff. And it's still a little bit strong in colour maybe, so I might just get a bit of burnt sienna, which is the opposite side of the colour wheel on blue. If you got blue on one side of the colour wheel up here, the opposite side of the colour wheel, if it's a big circle, will be oranges and browns. So if you add that to the blue, it'll grey it. So I've added a bit of that brown to my blue to grey it. And that's kind of close on what we wanted for our horizon colour. A nice dark horizon, like so. Now, as it gets closer to the viewer's eyes, there's more seaweed. So you've got that distant dark blue we just mixed up, but there's more seaweed in here, which is giving a little bit more of a magenta purple colour. So we'll alter that a little bit and mix that in. So I'll grab a bit of this magenta and just, not too much, just put it on the edge here with a little bit more of the white to lighten it. That's lightened it too much, so we'll just go darken it a little bit more. But it's magenta dominant. Mainly got, so it's got a little bit of the ultramarine blue, but it's a stronger version of magenta thrown in. That just gives you a slight purple twang just here where the weed is. Just grab a bit more purple. I can see it's slightly darker and slightly more red. That's like so. Now the fun part, we want to get some of those shallow waters. So let's just go up here and have a look at this. Where the weed starts to finish and you start to get into these turquoise colours, that'll be a fun part. There's a lot of subtleties in those beachy shallow water colours. Okay, let's have a look. Right, to start with, to make the deepest ocean blues like so, if we get some, we'll try a bit of ultramarine blue and viridian green with a little bit of white, and you'll see the white really turquoises it off. Now for your deeper waters, that's the type of colour you're going to be wanting to be using. The viridian greens, just an example, I'll stick some here. Viridian greens and a bit of white and blue. The blue will keep it more of that blue-green colour. Okay, so now we get into some of the areas where it's a little bit more of a shallow colour, so we'll go for some burnt siennas, yellow ochres and burnt siennas, and some white. That'll lighten the tone off. Now, if you get some of these viridian green colours with the tiniest piece of white, you'll see that you get a light turquoisey colour. Now if you half mix that in with these ochre colours, you can see it's more of that shallow water, getting more, because it's all varies as you go, and it's getting more of that gradation of where the water's getting shallower. And as it goes further, it becomes more and more about the colour of the sand rather than the colour of the water, so it becomes more and more of the ochres, burnt sienna, yellow ochre and white, and less of the green. So that's the yellow ochre, the burnt sienna and white, with less of the green, and so I can put that in there like so. And you're seeing the water starting to become gradiating into a shallower colour. So, I may just pull this in a bit more so you can see the gradations a bit clearer. There we go. Now, that's gradiating through the different layers, and of course there's going to be a lot of subtle changes between all that. So far we have, we've got the sky blues going into the ocean and then coming gradiating into here into the burnt sienna ochres. Then you've got some weed colours here, so we can mix up some of them in the foreground weed colours rather than the deep ocean weed colours. We can just throw a few of them around. So that'll be more of the straight burnt siennas. Maybe a little bit of blue with it, we'll just try it out. So that's gone a bit green, so if you put a bit of magenta with that, which is more on the other side of the colour wheel, you'll get these kind of darker browns and whatever. And if you throw a bit of that in, where am I going to throw that in? I might just throw a little bit in here. And a little bit in here. Just those darker weedy colours. Now what I want to do is actually paint. We now have the deeper weed colours in here, but what I want to paint is where it's sticking out of the water, this rocky outcrop that's got the weed and whatever on it. So that is a much lighter tone, much lighter in tone, so that'll be yellow ochres, maybe a tiny bit of burnt sienna, half mixed in. But if you really want to make it sting and really pop, you get a bit of this cad yellow deep, half mix that in. You can see that's a very lively colour. So we won't get too carried away, but you can see immediately it's starting to get those really strong colours. And so if they were placed here, you'll start to see that you're really getting those bright colours coming out. Let's just mix up a bit more of this colour here to stick in the backdrop so you can see the contrast. A bit of the shallow stuff in here. So you can see that's giving you the idea of the colour of the weed. The colour of the weed that is sticking out of the water. Now if we wanted to get into these colours here, which really pull your eyes into the painting, obviously that's a lot of white, but there's a lot of other subtle, well not a lot of subtle, but there are subtle colours in with it, which helps to make it pop a little bit more. So, a good way to do that is to obviously have predominantly white. But if you've got the option of either using a bit of burnt sienna with it, just to brown it off a bit, and you could also use a bit of yellow ochre with it. But if you really want it to pop, you get a bit of this cad yellow deep. Half mix that with the white, and it is a really beautiful, bright, strong colour. Bit of that burnt sienna mixed in. If you start placing that colour, you really start to get the feeling of the beach sand. Even with the banks jutting out like so. Now if we want to get, that's all very well and good, we've got some beach sand, we've got these rocky outcrops. Now just in here there's a little bit of the sky colour reflecting into the shallow waters. So what I would do there is mix something similar to the sky, but usually it's slightly different when it hits the water. If you just mix the sky colour itself, the blue is usually just a little bit greener when it sits on the water because there's already green in the water. So I find that the blue that you need to put on there needs to be a light tone blue, but a little bit more red than the sky. And that red is the opposite of the colour wheel on green, the green water, which we're going to be placing it, and so it helps break it up and stop it from seeming to fade towards the green colour. So you stick a little bit of that, more of a purpley blue, just lightly put it in, not too much. And then we'll get back to our weed colours because there's a little bit more weed there. We're going back to the ochres again, a bit more white. Burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and white. Just lacing them in here. There's a few more in here. Okay, so that has given us these beautiful blues here and then the ochres on the side here. Now we've got the whole combination of all that and all that running through there. Now in here I've got a few red undercolours, there's some pig face and stuff, so I've used some pure reds here and there. There's a lot of greens in this painting, so sometimes to make the green brighter, you choose the colour on the other, you choose something on the other side of the colour wheel, which will be either a alizarin crimson like that or a cad, something really bright. And as soon as you pop them in next to anything that's green, so we'll go, what have we got here? We'll go burnt sienna and a bit of that viridian green. Once you start popping those greens and stuff near that red, it really jumps. And if you smear it, you get that kind of effect where they pop and blend together. So now, just put a little bit more of that beach sand through here. A bit more of the yellow ochres and burnt siennas. And white. Mix that through there like the middle tones. Maybe mix up a bit of burnt sienna and alizarin crimson, which is a slightly more reddy pink base, because I've used that in the painting. Could even go a slightly more magenta base. That kind of picks up the colours of, well, you know, different sorts of weeds and whatever's on the surface here. Stick that in like so. There's a bit of weeds being washed up on the beach, etc., etc. You'll see through here a bit of dry weed and whatever. Then we can mix up a few of these greens for the salt bushes and different scrubs that are right on the edge of the coast there. You can just pop a few of them in. Let's just have a look. Okay, so that would be a viridian green again with yellow ochre. A lot of yellow ochre in that. In fact, let's see if I can find it. I've just been a tiny bit stingy on the yellow ochre. It's a colour I use a lot of in the landscape. I find it a really great colour to use. So if you're using those yellow ochres and those greens that I just mixed up then, you'll see you get a fairly strong colour. If you want to knock it back a bit because it's too strong, just try a little bit of burnt sienna with it. You can see it just takes the edge off it, depending on what colour you want. Now if you put a tiny bit of white with that, you'll frost it out a bit more and give more of that salt bushy colour. You watch this. Frost it out with a little bit more white. So if you stick those colours, you know, around, got a few salt bushes and whatever else kicking around here. I'll mix up a dark, so I'll use some reds. Maybe green, so if I use red, green and brown, I'll get a really strong dark. You've got red, you go to the opposite side of the colour wheel, you've got green. That's a hugely strong dark. You can pop a bit of that into the shadow area of these salt bushes. Mix up a bit more sandy colours over here. So you can start to see the coast is forming there. Let's just go up here and have a look what we got. You can see I've just been working in here. I've got the weeds and I've put a bit of this salt bush colour on some of those darker tones. Now I've purposely gone red in there because there is a bit of pig face around, but also red is the opposite side of the colour wheel of green. So I find in the shadows if you put something warm like a red, it'll make that green really lively. You could just have a dark neutral colour in there, but it wouldn't be as lively here. So if you really want that to pop, you can put some accents of strong colours in here on the opposite side of the colour wheel to get it to go. Alright, just go up a little bit higher. Let's just have a look at this. That beautiful cliff face out there is a real high key colour, a keynote of the painting with the beach sand out on the headland there. Let's just have a look at that. That's the type of colour that is the brightest colours you can mix. So what did I actually use? I reckon I used a cad orange deep. I may have used a bit of cad red with it just to make it a bit more orange, but not much because that's a very strong colour. Now if you just put a touch of white with it and don't let any of the other cold colours like these purples or blues get in amongst it, it'll weaken it. So don't. That's got to be pure white and pure cad colours. And you just get the tone you want, but I'll make it slightly lighter, and the lighter it goes, I find it needs to be more of yellow added to it. If you have too much red, it seems to go a pinky colour. So the more white you add, the more yellow you add also. So it is quite yellow. And so to get that pop on the headland there, you would stick it out here somewhere, wherever it is. And then of course, Just get that white again, because we seem to have lost it. Some real clean white that was just underneath it to create that coastal beach sand there. And then if we just go for some more of these. Before I go any further, now I've gotten that coastline going there, I just want to quickly show you something. Up here, there's always a lot of subtle different colours in the picture itself. Those salt bushes and that up there are a real high key green that I've painted. So how I got that, so I'm still using the same Viridian green, but what I'm doing is, I'll get myself a piece of Viridian green like so. What I'll do with this, I'll get a piece of clean white and make a really high key green like so. Now if you mix that with your yellow ochres, it gives you a really bright stinging colour. So you can add a little bit of white, but the white, if you add white to the yellow ochre, it seems to frost it out. But if you want to keep it a strong high key colour, I find it's better to add the white to the Viridian green, mix that up as a little brew, and then splash it in like that. And then when you put yellow ochre, you get that real strong high key effect. And that works well for high key salt bushes and whatever you want, just on the edge of the picture out here. Okay, now getting to make the headland recede a bit, just then we painted those greens in here, but if you want the top of the headland and that receded stuff, it's got to be a key down green because it's got to go back into the distance. So to do that, there's actually quite a lot of things you can do, but one thing, which I find is a good one, is you want to knock it back and you want to kill the intensity of the colour. One way you can do that is actually mix up this brew again of magenta and white and blue, so you've kind of got a high key, a fairly high key magenta blue. You think, what's that all about? You watch this. As soon as you mix that into any strong high key colours like this, it starts to recede it. You'll see it's going into a distant colour now. It's getting more of that headland, top of the headland type of thing, where it's a more of a keyed off colour. It's further away, so it would come up in here. And then obviously there's a bit of dark shadow behind it, so I'll just quickly knock up a dark shadow of magentas and blues. Fairly neutral colour. It is a magenta-y blue colour, right? Yeah, so just to get that headland to sort of stand out, I'll stick that in there, because there was a bit of, there's some blue off in the distance there, like so. And that is just giving you, oh, let's have a look. So I've painted some of those distant ones with the magentas in there, then I've gone for the darker blues just up here, just to make that headland stand out. Now I haven't painted any of this water here, but it is very similar to there, those beach type of tones. We can knock a bit of that up if we want. For a start, we've got, we'll just get some of these colours out of the way, because some of these things I was mixing are actually now becoming part of the painting, which we don't want, so they can get out. Right, so we want to fill in that beach sand, that shallow water area, so that'll be all these type of colours that we had, but it's a little bit frosted off with the shallow beach sand, so you've got the more of the burnt siennas, the yellow ochres mixed in, the burnt sienna, and a little bit of those blues. And so if you stick that in, you kind of get a shallowy colour like so. Now what I'll do is, I'll just drift this across a bit further so we can see what we're doing, more of that colour. That's just trying to bring the whole picture together, I guess. Right, now just go for some more of these intermediate turquoise greens. Mix up a bit of white and burnt sienna so I get not the strongest green in the world, but not too bad, you know, something in the middle. Because they vary, the whole lot vary, like it's always varying between the different layers. But if we just go for a bit more of a turquoise and blue, we get that deeper watercolour just on the edge here. And like I said before, I might just bring this across so we can see what we're doing. That's just a bit more of the sky runs in there. Alright, so now, got a lot of that done. Let's just go have a look up here. I was just filling in all these areas here, and as I'm going up I'm kind of getting into all the colour mixes that are on the palette in the way, but there's a bit of a headland just out here. Now first there's some ultramarine blues and water as an underpainting just under it, and then there's some really keyed down browns. Now how do you key down those browns and make them go back instead of being foreground browns? Okay, let's check that out then. Because making things drop off is very important. Making things recede into the distance. So let's just clean all this off. It's kind of interfering with what we're trying to do there. So to make a distant headland here drop off, you'd still use your burnt siennas and white. And a little bit of yellow ochre. You can see I've gone through the yellow ochre again. It's probably the colour I use the most after. I'd say white and yellow ochre are the two most. Okay, so we just put it there. Now that's your strong, that's a fairly strong colour, right? But if you drop, say, a little bit of these magenta blues and stuff from over here, it's going to knock it back. I'll just put a tiny bit of magenta in that. That's a bit too much, so you just got to get more white. Now you can see I've overdone that, but that's knocked it back a lot. So what I'll do is I'll just put a bit more of the cleaner colours back in to richen it up again. But immediately you can see it's turning into a, put a bit of blue with it again. Depends how far you want to kill it off. That's killing it off further and further, keeping the tone light. Immediately that's dropped into a keyed down distant headland colour. Takes it off a lot further away. And like I was saying, so that colour, if I wanted to go even further away, I'd keep adding a bit more of these blues. Yeah, see how it's dropping off further and further. It's becoming more and more of a distant colour. Okay. Now, just clean up this edge a little bit. What do we got here? Anyway, so you can see we're basically getting these distant colours up here. Where are we? You're getting those receding ochres, and I was just trying to get the line a bit straight here so you can see what I'm doing, but that's not so much important, it's just more about mixing the colours. Alright, well there you go, that's a pretty good example as to what's going on. We've mixed all the shallow waters here, and they were more of the burnt sienna yellow ochre with a bit of viridian green dominant. As it gets into the deeper waters, there's less of the burnt siennas, and there's more of the green, viridian greens and blues. And then as it gets out here, it's a mixture of just ultramarine blues and phthalo blues, whichever combo you find's good. Up here, as I said, the reddest blues are in the top of the horizon. As it comes down, it gets more into that slight green and then into ochres, and then I've got a bit of a grey blue just smeared across there for that horizon distance. These bits of weed that are out in the water here, you can see I've got some bright accents too. I've got some cad reds and yellows on top of that weed colour, but just getting that weed colour in general, yeah, yellow ochres, burnt siennas, and a spike of this cad red is just okay, so you get some of these bright yellows and reds, the opposite side of the colour wheel, and stick them next to the blue and just watch the blue pop because it's on the opposite side of the wheel. If you've got blue up here on the colour wheel, imagine there's a colour wheel circle here, you've got blue up here, you're going to have the yellows and reds down the opposite on the other side. If you mix them together, it'll turn into a grey, but if you just sit them next to each other, they'll really jump in your eyes. And that contrast is great for putting in something like this headland here, just dropping a few of those cad oranges against those cool blues, it'll really pop. Or throwing a few of them in here next to the cool greens really pop. So where you want an accent, you could put the complementary reds and high keys against them, like in here, drop a bit of a red in there somewhere and all that, and it really starts to jump out. Okay, but in saying that, where we've got this, I'll just come up a bit so you can see what I'm doing. Where we put those orangey reds, if you stick them next to blue like that, like I was saying, it jumps, but as soon as you mix them together, it quickly greys and turns into mud and grey. So if you want a dark, subdued, weaker colour, you get the opposite side of the colour wheel and put it with it, and bang, it'll grey it off. But if you want the strongest accent possible, like I said, you get those opposite side of the colour wheel, place it next to it, and then they really jump next to each other. Alright, well there you go. Hopefully we've learnt something from that. There's the seascape in a very rough formation, but hopefully explained so you can see what we're trying to achieve. This just basically giving you an idea on what goes through my head when I'm mixing those colours. Well there you go, that's about it. As you can see, it's all very subtle stuff. There's a lot of variance going on in the actual colours themselves, and hopefully by giving this little demo down here, I've given you a bit of an idea as to what's going through my head, the processes. Now like I said, something that's very important when you're accenting in your picture, you've mixed all these colours and everything's lovely and you've got pretty much the basic effect of the landscape you're looking at, but in the focal areas, playing with those warm and cool colours, like I was saying earlier, purposely leaving those oranges and reds straight next to the blue greens really makes it jump, and so that'll pull your eyes in and really drag your eyes in, as will white highlights that'll always pull your eyes through. So the idea is you're coming through, these things are stronger so they're pulling your eyes in, other stuff's not quite as strong, just kind of repeating itself in a weaker way, so it's still there for interest but it's not competing with the main focal areas. So that's a good key, but like I said, if you mix that colour, orange, with that green, that orangey red, straight away, if you mix them together, you're going to end up getting a grey. But you place them next to each other, and it's the most intense thing you can do. The opposite side of the colour wheel, blues and greens, and reds and oranges down here, place them together, your eyes can't seem to focus on them properly both at the same time, so instead you get this bright effect in your brain picks up some sort of bright effect and that really leads your eyes to it. But blend them a bit more and it turns into neutral nothing. That's why the palette knife's a good way to do it. It's very easy to get thick paint and place it very lightly on top of the blue and not have it mix in. It really jumps. Alright, well there you go, there's something different. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you could follow that and understand exactly what was going on. Alright, well thanks again for watching, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Leave a message down below, let me know what you think of this style of video, if you learned anything from that, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and press that notification bell, then you won't miss any of these videos as I upload them. And by the way, I'm just about to head out bush in the next day, back out on the river. It's going to be fantastic stuff, cannot wait. Take all the paints with me, you've got plenty of canvases, should be great fun. So I'll be gone for a few days and then I'll upload on the next week. So you'll get this one today, and a week later, hopefully I've got that trip all edited and done, and we'll have that one for the next week. Alright, well thanks again for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Look at those shallow waters now all coming in. It's amazing how quickly it changes once you get the brush out and start playing around like this. Oh, you can get those flies out of your face while you're doing it.